The world of theater is full of stars. But just like in the night sky, sometimes we don't see them all. Some are in the wings, some are maybe up over us in the catwalk. Hopefully they're not under the stage, but you never know. In this series, we are going to meet those hidden stars of the theater, hear their stories, and be inspired by them. So join me on this journey here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Hidden Stars of Theater. It is Jamie, and this is a bonus video. And if you watched the video with Anna Louizos, you know what it's about. If you didn't, stop watching this video and go watch it first, because it's awesome and she's awesome. And you will have a greater appreciation if you don't already know who she is, which you should. If you don't, you need to just go out and immerse yourself in life more. Duh. But she's a scenic designer. She is an incredible scenic designer. And one of the things I asked her to do, that she's been gracious enough to agree, is to walk us through her design process. As a designer myself, I'm interested. I know we have a lot of designers that watch, and some of you guys are interested. And so hearing from one of the best is an opportunity we don't often have. And so basically I just said, hey, Anna, can you walk us through from getting a call from somebody with a pitch saying, hey, I'm doing this show, will you design it? And her saying yes all the way. Hopefully she says yes to the pitch. Otherwise it's going to be a quick, quick process, but all the way through. So Anna, I will just, without taking any more time, I will turn it over to you. Welcome back. Welcome again. And the show is yours, ma'am.
Okay. Well, it's great to be back.
Yeah.
I know we talked about a lot of different shows in the previous episode, or whatever you want to call it, section. And I mentioned a number of plays and musicals that were part of what I've created. But in general, I would say the process is pretty much the same. Starting with, we're doing a new play. Here's the script. I'll get the script. If there's music, I will listen to the music if it's been recorded. And once I hear and read the play, one of the first things I actually do is, say it's a musical, for example, I will read through the play, and then I will read it again, and I will break it down by scene. So scenically, in other words. So if it says, it begins in one room and then it goes to an outdoor space, I will just note that. I will put little tabs on the side of the script, and I will say what the scene is, so that I understand I get an overall sense of the picture of what the scope of this play or musical is. And I'll talk to the director. We'll have a conversation. And first I'd like to find out whether the director has any strong visual ideas or any strong opinions about how they want to approach this piece. Sometimes they want to do it in a very realistic way. Sometimes they want to do it in a very abstract way. So first you have to arrive at a place where you understand what the director's vision is.
Right.
And then often what I'll do is I'll start to compile research, visual research, images, things, whatever it is that speaks to me about this particular piece. And often it's not necessarily literal. It doesn't have to necessarily be a literal representation of what the play is, but it might be a stylistic representation.
Okay.
Maybe there's a certain painter that has a style that evokes what I think might visually help us somehow into this piece. Or if it's something literal like locations, I'll find research that represents that location or elements of the location. So that's the kind of visual material that I'll compile. And then we'll get together with the director, and sometimes the director will very likely have visual material as well. And we'll sit there and we'll look at each other's work. Or nowadays we'll put it in a Dropbox, a virtual Dropbox, and we'll send each other files, and then I can just kind of scroll through the files, and if there's something that speaks to me that they've sent me, I'll respond to that, and I'll say, oh, there's something about this. I see what you mean. And so we find our way into the piece together. and hopefully find a common appreciation for what direction we want to go.
Yeah. Kind
And
of a
if I'm,
shared vision.
what's that?
Kind of a shared vision.
Yeah, and then if there's some specific ideas I have that pop in my head based on this conversation, I'll start to do little sketches, like just little thumbnail sketches of what I think the stage picture might look like, or maybe a collage that might have pieces of something that represent the feel of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly we kind of circle around. We kind of circle around and find ways to kind of have the conversation that might lend itself towards approaching this piece. And what we might do is sometimes read through the piece together. Like we'll read through the script and we'll say, like there's a certain challenge with a particular scene. The director will say, "So I want them to enter from a staircase in the scene. I don't know how we're going to do the staircase and how it will work for the rest of the scenes." So you have these kinds of conversations where you get into like the logistics of things, and but often what I'll do is I will give them some representation of what I think it might look like, whether, like I said, it might be in a little sketch form. And if we kind of agree on, let's go in this direction, then what I'll do is make a little model. I'll do a very rough model. If it's got walls, I would do really rough representation of wall in paper. I'll draw where the doors would be, where the windows would be, and I'll just mark it out in scale. And in scale, I think we talked about that in the previous episode, but basically the space in my model form has to represent the actual space of the theater, so that when we're putting things in there, we know that they can fit, even in a rough form. I may not have all the answers, but at least I'll do some approximation of what at least the space could look like with the set in it. And it'll just be white paper, and I always intend to have a scissor handy, because if we start to do a rough version of the model, he'll say, "You know what? I want the door on this side," and so I'll just cut it out, rip it up.
It's when those kindergarten skills come in.
Yeah, exactly. And drawing helps too.
Yeah.
So the ground plan is really the first thing you pretty much settle on, I would say, because the ground plan is the map. Really, it's the map for your play or your musical. And once you establish where things will be on the stage, that becomes your foundation, and then you build up from there. So like I won't necessarily know how tall the walls need to be, but I'll do something that represents, if it's realistic, maybe 8-foot walls, maybe 10-foot walls if it's a grand room. So we start to set it up in model form, and if the director is happy with this direction, then I'll do a better version of that. So I'll draw it out on drafting paper, and then I'll do elevations of all the walls, which means you basically take if you have a 6-foot wall and the wall is going to be 8 feet tall, you draw it as if you're looking straight at it, and right above you do sheets of drafting that represent each of those walls. So where the walls are, where the windows are, you have to draft all this stuff out.
With
Eventually, it's
everything there. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be dimensional, and eventually those drawings become the packet of drawings that you give to the scene shop who is going to build this. So ultimately you have to do a really refined version of all of the scenic elements that go into being built for your set. It's like architecture. It really is. You're doing architecture. They may not be made out of concrete. They'll be made out of Luan or plywood, and they'll be painted to look like concrete,
or muslin, or whatever. Yeah.
So that's basically one of the elements of what it is to design scenery. And then once that process is complete, at least the drawing of it, then you have to determine the colors and the textures of all those walls. So whether you want it to look like wallpaper, if you want it stenciled, if you want painted drops, what they need to look like and how big they need to be and where they fly in the ground plan. So in the ground plan, you have not only the pieces that are touching the floor always, if you have walls, but also pieces that, if you have automation and you have pieces that track on and off stage, where the tracks are and how the wagons track on and off stage and where they get stored off stage, where the pieces fly in. And in between all of the scenery, you need to allow for room for the lights so that the
Those
lighting
guys.
designer can light all the pieces, which is
And sound and
and then
speakers and everything that
speakers.
comes in.
Exactly.
How early in the process do you coordinate with those other designers?
When I come up with a ground plan, I send it to the lighting designer.
Okay.
I don't necessarily have to have all the scenic elements fleshed out by then. I
Yeah.
show them the ground plan. I say, this is, and usually kind of traditionally what you need when you have a multi-set play or musical and you have things coming in and out, you try to stack your drops close together if they're
Hmm.
flying in, so that the lighting position, which is always permanent,
Right. The electrics.
it will be able to light all the drops that fly in. Either
Right.
if you're backlighting, you need room to backlight. So we often leave like a 3-foot segment in between a lot of the scenic elements.
And
At
those are
least,
pretty preset, the batten positions, right, at the theaters. So I guess in the beginning you start with that knowledge, of course.
well, yeah, if it's a theater that has flies, yeah, they're
Yeah.
usually line sets, which are the
Right.
pipes that fly in and out. They're often spaced generally, 6 to 8 inches apart,
Hmm.
and they're with a lot of variations of that. But and then often there are theaters that might have some obstructions where they don't have things flying in. So you have to contend with the space that you're given, first of all.
Yeah.
And every theater is different. That's why you could conceive of all this great stuff, but then once you get the real space, you have to deal with the real space.
You mean you don't just have 100% free reign to be creative and it just happens?
You really don't. You really don't. You have to deal with a lot of obstacles. And honestly, one of the first things I like to know when I'm designing is I want a ground plan of the theater. I want to know what my parameters are. So, because that's important. And a lot of times they have things like air conditioning ducts that you don't realize are going to get in your way.
Yeah.
Or in some of these regional theaters, they have orchestra shells that live up in their theaters.
Yes, we
When
do
they
at
do
the theater I designed for, we have those.
yeah,
Yep.
so when they do concerts, so
Huge.
there's a whole section that you can't hang anything in. So you
Yes.
have to jump ahead to the most available line set. So all of those things you have to factor in. So it's not just painting pretty pictures and coming up with pretty ideas. You have to solve a lot of problems
Yeah.
along the way. But once we've developed a design packet, which is the drafting and all the color elevations, and often there'll be a model, and sometimes the model will reflect the color. If you do a color model, you could show all the details of the models. And sometimes it's hard to do really good detail in small scale.
Right.
But now, because we can do color elevations on the computer, we can print it out in scale. So all the little details could be, if it's a photoshopped image, you can really make it perfectly to scale and put it in your model. There's also 3D printing now, where you can print out furniture in 3D. You don't have to necessarily build it out of.
I saw on your website where you were talking about School of Rock and the student desks and things that you guys made.
Those are all made by hand.
Yeah, that's
all made by
phenomenal.
hand.
That's an art in and of itself, isn't it?
Yeah, model making is a great skill to have. It comes in very handy when you want to work for a designer, because they always need something built. Yeah, so the more detailed you can represent your idea, the better people can respond to it. The more the director can understand exactly what you have in mind. And when the shop is building it, they actually have an example of what it should look like. So all of those things help. And then, of course, when the scene shops get the work, they draft their own versions of what they have to build, because they have to build it so that the scenery can come apart, because they build it in the scene shop and then they have to transport it to the theater, unload it off the trucks, and then put it back together. So they do engineering drawings of your scenery. So they will determine what the framing is and all the flats and what they're covered with, and then the scenic artists paint everything and do all the surfaces. So there's
Which
a
is
lot of
why you
people.
want to be as clear and descriptive as possible.
Yes, it's
So
very
nothing's
helpful.
lost in translation.
That's right. That's right. So yes, and so it helps to understand what it takes to put all those things together. And the more you understand construction of scenery, I think it's just helpful, because
Yeah.
sometimes I've been approached with, say, a challenge where they tell me, oh, we have to put a seam right here, and it's going to be visible when it's on stage. So you either have to say, okay, fine, I'll accept it, or you might be able to suggest a different way
Right.
to break up the scenery, or sacrifice, or shift your window slightly so that it lines up with your window. If it's like a 2-inch difference, it's like, okay, I can move my window. So it helps to stay in contact with the shop. And I go to the scene shop while they're building. We make periodic visits to the scene shops and see the progress of things getting built, and which is really fun,
I was
because
going to say, yeah, that sounds that's
it's
like
so
kid candy
fun.
store. Yeah.
When I was doing Cinderella, the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella for Broadway, it was fun to be the first person to run down the staircase, because I got to be the
Oh,
one,
no way.
when Cinderella runs down the stairs. I wanted to see what it felt like, because
Did you lose a shoe?
no, I didn't have to lose my shoe. But just to see what it feels like, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
know, the actress is going to have to run down the stairs. So I wanted to follow the whole trajectory, running across the railing area, the platforms, and then coming down the stairs.
Yeah, because that's an important thing. You can't design the set in such a way that it appears to the audience that the actor could be in danger, because you pull them out of the scene.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Very
did
important.
the biggest set I've ever built. It may not be true. One of the lately is for Man of La Mancha, and I built a huge set.
Mm.
And there's a scene where the knights come in, and down I had some boxes stacked as a stairway. Well,
Mm-hmm.
my mom came to a preview and instantly came to me after that scene and said, you have to give them something to hold on, a handrail.
Oh.
And even though the actors didn't feel unsafe going down, to her it appeared unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
So I built in a yard arm kind of thing with a pulley on it that they were able to
Oh,
use.
yeah.
But I hadn't thought about it. And she was right. And she said, it totally pulled me out of the play. I was so worried about for those kids that they're going to fall. And I thought, you can't do that. That's
right. That's
those
right.
are so running down the stairs is the exact same thing, right?
Yeah.
Is she going to fall on her fanny? It's not into the woods.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's great.
So, yeah. So that, that it's wonderful to see it all come together. And sometimes there are issues that come up while they're building things, and it's good to show up and be part of the solution. So once the set gets constructed, sometimes they'll put it together for you so that you can see how it comes together. And then it all gets transported to the theater and assembled for the load in, and then they hang the lights and they do all that work together. And once that's all up, we all assemble in the theater to start dry tech, which means you're teching without the actors.
Yeah.
Hopefully the actors are still towards the end of their rehearsal period. Prior to that dry tech period, at the very beginning, when they all assemble for the first reading of the play, that's usually when we present. We have a meet and greet where all of the designers show up in the rehearsal room. Everybody, we all stand in a circle. We all introduce ourselves to each other, because we're going to be seeing each other hopefully for a long time. And then the director will make a speech. The producer might say something, and then it gets handed over to the set designer, and then I will present the set, and I'll show them the sketches or the model, and I'll have my research up on the wall, so they all get to see what we've done and how much time we spent to put this whole thing together, so that they can see how we've arrived at this set. And the same with the costume designer. They will make their little, they'll be introduced, and they'll talk about their design and their concept, and everybody gets to see the costumes that they're going to wear. And the lighting designer might say hello, but basically they can't show them anything until they get into the theater. And then, so we might make periodic visits into the theater into the rehearsal room to watch the rehearsal, or meet with a director, answer a question or something. And then cut to our first day of dry tech. The actors are almost finished, or they have their day off, and we start to try to move. If we have moving scenery, it gives us a chance to program some moves of the scenery, and it gives the lighting designer a chance to focus on the set pieces prior to the actors coming in.
Right.
Hopefully we get a couple of days at least of dry tech before they show up. And then once the actors come in, we start tech. We start at the beginning, and slog through every single lighting cue, every single set move.
Yeah.
And the actors have to have the patience to just stand in place while they focus the lights, and hopefully, it seems to me that a lot of people now like to start with the costumes right away,
Hmm.
because it used to be back in the day that you would tech without the costumes, and then you would have a whole second process where the costumes start getting incorporated in. But because if there's a lot of costume changes that need to happen, I think that a lot of directors are favoring having them come in with the costumes right away so that we can solve the problems all together. So
Yeah.
that seems to be what's more popular these days.
Well, and with
And
more
so
and more automation as well, and especially if you're in a show with big costumes, right? So many moving parts and things, it's good to know what's going to snag what.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, so we tech hopefully get through the show. Sometimes it takes a week to get through Act One, and then another week to get through Act Two, or 5 days for each, and then we start doing runs,
Yeah.
and it's a long process, and we do long days. They call them 10 out of 12s, where we work till midnight. And
Yeah.
for the actors, they don't come till like 1 o'clock and work through. But for the rest of the crew, like us, we're there. The crew's
You
there at
live
8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they don't get a break until midnight. They work all day long. So they're
That's
long
why they
days.
are our hidden stars.
That's right. They're the machinery that make it all work.
They are absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So
So
then, I guess at that point for you, it's just about tweaking and being around in case something you realize, oh, there's got to be a change because
yes, yes.
most things at that point scenically are set.
Yes, most of the time. And then there's particular elements within some of these shows where it all depends on the actor still. You don't know if it's going to work until you have everyone in place. So that's when it can become a bit of a challenge, and it might take more time than you expect. Like I'm just thinking for Cinderella, you know, for her dress transformation,
Yeah.
it involved, the first one involved a tree that's part of my proscenium. So we had to hide the dress on the base of the tree, and it was painted to look like it was part of the tree. And when she leans against the tree and then pulls the dress away from the tree, that was all something we had to do on stage. We had to figure that out on stage. Um, the carriage transformation, we had to work that out on stage with the crew and the actors, and the pumpkin that disappeared in the wall. All of those
Yeah.
things you have to work out on stage. So
That's the
sometimes
fun part, though. That's what I love about it. It's those.
yeah,
Don't you
yeah.
just love that? I mean,
Oh
see
yeah.
people say, I don't know if we can do this. That's a challenge. No, 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 no. That's the best part.
Yes.
That's one of my proudest moments as a scenic designer was Legally Blonde in
Hmm.
the courtroom scene, transforming. I built it looked to be just the judge's stand and the witness stand. And in an instant in scene, it transformed into the bathroom scene with a shower and a toilet and
Huh.
subway tile, and people were just like, well, wait a minute, what had happened? Yeah. And it was just, it's one of those things when you realize I can do that. I know how to do
That's
that.
right.
And boom,
That's
and you
right.
do it and it works. And it's just like, I love this. It's
It's
amazing.
great. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
sorry. I
that's
told
what
you
I
I'd
live
pay
for.
it for you. No.
Yeah.
And
No,
then
you
opening
you
night and standing ovations and Tony Awards and
yeah, sometimes.
amazing.
Yeah, no. Then you can, once you start running the show in previews and the audiences start to come, you gauge. Oh, is this going to work? Are they going to like it? Did they get that scene? Did they understand it? And hopefully nothing technically goes wrong. But often in previews, there are technical issues because we're just running it for the first time, with an audience. So, um, and sometimes if it's a new piece, the the book writer will want to change lines,
Yeah.
and so we not only run the previews that night, but during the day, the actors come in and we tech new scenes. We'll
Yeah.
tech new scenes, and so that's what previews are for. Often before you officially open, there are a couple of weeks, if not more, of previews, and previews allow the equity actors to a certain amount of time to come in and rehearse. So if they need to change lines or songs or cut songs, that's when you do it. And then at night they have to go and perform,
Yeah.
remembering what they aren't going to change until 2 days later. So for the actors, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
If they have to do a lot of changes, they memorize new lines for the rehearsal part, but then they don't necessarily put them in there for that night. They have to put it in, the next night. So
That would
that's
be
tough for them.
I would
I
never,
know.
yeah, I would mess up all the time.
Yeah.
That would be bad. And then there's times where you spend all of that time and it doesn't come out of previews. The show ends.
Oh,
Those are
well,
not happy times, huh?
I'm
When
trying to think. It ever happened to me? It's. I've always had a show that's opened. It's always
that's good.
opened.
Good.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily last that long.
Right.
You know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's
Oh,
heartbreaking.
one question I've wondered, when a show transitions from Broadway to tour, I know often it's like Hamilton is still on Broadway and they just create duplicate sets, but I believe there are times where the show directly comes from Broadway to tour. Obviously, the set has to transition a bit depending upon what size venue. Are you involved ever
No.
with that, or?
Oh, always.
Yeah,
No, and as a matter of fact, it might seem like it's the Broadway set, but it's actually not. It's a
it's real,
it's a
really.
newly designed. Yeah, most tours are have to be designed differently to be able to load in and load out of a theater in 12 hours.
Yeah,
12 hours often,
it's
because what
it's
happens is they play the show Sunday night or Sunday
yep.
matinee. It all gets unloaded into the trucks, transported to the next venue. They have Monday morning and all day Monday and part of Tuesday, and by Tuesday night they have a performance. So
It's
it has to disassemble and assemble in
yep.
that much time. So all the tours that I've designed are designed just for the tour. The only time that maybe you might hear of a set that's on a tour that was from Broadway is probably they've taken pieces of it, but they've not taken the
It's
entire
just
set
adapted.
because most Broadway sets are not designed to tour. They're
Right.
just not. So, like you might save elements like drops and certain pieces and use them on a tour, but they're designed to tour. Yeah,
So what happens to those old sets?
they most of the time they get destroyed.
Ah,
They might store some of pieces or props because props are easier to store,
right.
but the expense of a big warehouse space, especially in the New York area, is too prohibitive.
How
And
do you
and
start a business?
without the prospect of, well, believe me, I have a business that's similar to that
Oh
actually.
yeah?
I don't think I told you about that.
No.
It's well, that's the goal is. I mean, originally I wanted to open a store for
Yeah.
Broadway, pieces, but obviously space is at a premium.
Right.
So I have a website called Broadway Design Exchange,
You
which
should
is
have
a
mentioned that. See, I'll put that on the screen. Everybody go check it out. Broadway
yeah,
Design Exchange.
yeah. Yeah, well, what inspired me was the fact that so many designers generate so much stuff. When,
Right.
like I told you, I do models, sketches, um, all kinds of things that I don't throw it away. I put it in a in a closet or in a storage space. So knowing that I'm a designer, that I'm not the only one who does this, I figured there must be a lot of designers that have a lot of stuff that they're thinking, what am I going to do with all this stuff? It's art, and the other thing is
Yes.
it's beautiful stuff and it deserves to be seen again. But usually after they leave the rehearsal studio, all that stuff gets gathered up and put away. No, never to see the light of day again. So I offered a place. This website is a place for designers to sell their
That's brilliant.
sketches, their
Yeah.
models, their model pieces, anything they want to sell on the website. So
I'll have to go check it
we
out.
have
That's
we have
amazing.
costume sketches, we have set design sketches and models, we have costumes, we have um, props, even like opening night gifts that people want to get rid of, or
Yeah.
show jackets, hats, the kinds of things that people keep, as souvenirs. So there's a whole range of things that are for sale on the website. And what what my dream would be to have a warehouse and to salvage a lot of these pieces so that people could buy them and have them. When we finally closed Avenue Q, I proposed to the producers that we salvage as much as we can of the set and put it on the website for sale, for auction, actually.
Yeah.
And we did that. So we saved all the windows, we saved the doors, we have all the props, and all that stuff got sold. People bought. There's people who have the windows from Avenue Q hanging in their living rooms now.
See, and that's awesome. Yeah, and I was even thinking, even pieces that maybe weren't so iconic, like we would love to have in our shows, in our theater. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Recycling that's great.
So my dream would be to have more of that available.
No doubt. Yeah, why not? It's all
closed. It is, and it has there's a lot of energy and nostalgia behind these pieces. They mean things to people. When In the Heights closed, the one thing I saved was the limousine sign, the Rosario sign. I took it home with me on the subway because the rest of it ended up in the trash. The rest of the set ended up in the trash. I know, it just kills me.
That hurts.
So, yeah, I had that sign, and I put it on the website, thinking that nobody would buy it for what I sold it for, but someone bought it.
Yeah.
So someone else has it now. But it's
great
fun.
idea. You stole my idea. Of course, I don't have access to it, but
yeah. But anyway, go check out the website.
I will.
And
That's
if
absolutely brilliant.
There's always new stuff that we add to it.
Yeah.
So. And I don't keep this stuff, by the way. It's not. I'm not in possession of all these sketches and all these models.
Right.
All the designers are in possession of those things, and I just facilitate. That's what the website is for. It's like Etsy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's incredible. I'll put some things on there, but nobody will buy them.
You're welcome to. You're welcome to. No, seriously.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I have a warehouse full. The house I live in. You know what? Our listeners don't need to.
Okay.
You guys, thanks for anything else, and then I'll tell you.
I do have some pieces from the Cinderella set that are in my barn right now.
Oh,
I do.
See, how great is that?
Yeah, and I have 3 huge crystal chandeliers from It Should Have Been You that was on Broadway that I couldn't fathom seeing them thrown into a dumpster. So I have these massive crates with 5-foot tall chandeliers in my barn.
You're my hero. You are my hero. Absolutely. I'll tell you, but we've got to go, unfortunately.
Okay.
Thank you. I cannot thank you enough. This has been wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us and for hearing Hannah's incredible process and just hanging out for our conversation.
It's great.
You enjoyed that. So thank you, listeners. Love you guys. We'll catch you next time right here on the Hidden Stars of Theater.